The arena was full of alien voices, sharp and loud like metal clashing against stone. The queen sat high on her throne, her golden eyes glowing with pride as her warriors cheered. At the center stood the human, small compared to the giant figures around him. His boots touched the cold sand, and in his hand was only a short weapon, small enough to be mistaken for a toy. The alien crowd broke into laughter. They pointed at him, some clutching their stomachs, others slapping the stone seats as if this was the best joke they had seen in years. The warrior princess stepped forward, her armor shining with crimson light, her blade twice the size of the human's body. She looked down at him as though he was a child holding a stick. "That is your weapon?" she asked loudly, her voice echoing through the stone walls. "A tiny piece of metal? You plan to face me with that? I could crush you with my hands." Her people roared in delight, their laughter rolling like thunder. The human did not move. His face stayed calm, his eyes focused not on her blade but on her stance. He shifted slightly, resting the weapon against his thigh. He did not answer her mockery. His silence only made the aliens laugh harder. The warrior princess circled him, the sand crunching beneath her boots. She swung her massive sword once in the air, the sound splitting the silence for a moment before the crowd cheered again. She leaned close, her sharp teeth flashing. "Maybe your kind believes small things can win wars," she said, her voice dripping with scorn. "But here, in this arena, size decides victory. You are already dead, little human." Some of the alien children in the stands copied her words, shouting, little human," like a chant. The queen smiled, pleased at the humiliation. The human tilted his head slightly, almost as if he heard something in the distance. He did not blink when sand from her boot sprayed near his face. His breathing was slow, his stance balanced. The alien princess struck the ground with her sword, sending a crack through the stone floor. The crowd gasped at her display of power before breaking again into laughter when the human still did not react. "Afraid? Too weak to speak?" she pressed, trying to provoke him. She wanted him to tremble, to lose control before the fight even began. But he only raised his small weapon slightly, testing its weight as if he was bored. That quiet confidence unsettled her for a moment. She narrowed her eyes, but then quickly covered it with another laugh. She raised her sword above her head, showing off to the crowd. "I will end this quickly," she promised them. "You will see how foolish it is to bring such a small weapon into a warrior's hall." The crowd erupted into wild cheering. They threw pieces of cloth and jewelry into the air, celebrating the human's defeat before the battle even started. Some even turned away, believing the duel was already decided. But the human stayed rooted in the sand, his hand loose but steady, his gaze fixed on the warrior princess like a hunter waiting for prey. She stepped closer again, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "I will break your body," she whispered. "And then I will show your people what happens when humans think they can stand against us." Still, he said nothing. A slight curve touched his lips, not a smile, not mockery, but something deeper, something unreadable. That expression sent a small chill down her back, though she quickly dismissed it. She lifted her sword again and took a stance, preparing to begin the duel. The announcer's voice echoed across the arena, declaring the start of the challenge. The crowd stomped their feet in rhythm, the ground shaking with the sound. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the air grew heavy with tension. Everyone's eyes were on the princess, waiting to see her cut the human down. She raised her sword high, aiming it straight at his chest. Her blade gleamed in the sunlight, long and sharp, the pride of her people's forge. Compared to it, the human's tiny weapon looked ridiculous. She grinned, her fangs flashing, and shouted for all to hear, "This is no battle. This is execution." The crowd cheered louder, filling the arena with deafening noise. The human finally moved. He lifted his small weapon, holding it with one hand. The aliens laughed again. They thought he was trying to copy their warrior stances, but his weapon was nothing compared to hers. He did not shout. He did not boast. He did not even look at the queen on her throne. He only stared at the warrior in front of him, waiting. For a brief moment, silence touched the arena. The laughter slowed, the stomping faded, and only the sound of the wind brushing across the sand remained. In that moment, the human stillness became heavy, almost dangerous. It was the kind of silence before a storm. The princess felt it, though she did not admit it to herself. She pointed her blade at him again, forcing a smirk onto her face. "Your toy will break on the first strike," she said. "And when it does, you will beg me for mercy." The human's eyes narrowed slightly, not in fear, but in something colder. He shifted his grip, preparing. The crowd saw nothing unusual in this, but she felt it. Deep inside, she realized he was not the one standing in danger. The queen lifted her hand, giving the final signal. The duel was about to begin. The arena roared one last time with laughter and cheers, certain of the outcome. The warrior princess raised her weapon high, and the human lifted his tiny one in reply. The moment stretched, filled with tension, the crowd blind to the truth, and only the two fighters sensing that something far greater was about to be revealed. The queen's voice cut through the noise of the crowd, deep and commanding, shaking the walls of the arena. Her golden staff struck the stone beside her, and all the laughter stopped. She rose from her throne, her long robes flowing like liquid fire. Her gaze fixed on the human, small and calm in the middle of the sand pit. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "Then let it be a duel," she declared, her words echoing in every corner. "Our strongest warrior against this human. Let us see how long his little toy keeps him alive." The aliens erupted into cheers, their voices rising like thunder. Some chanted the prince's name, others shouted for blood. The human stood still, his eyes never leaving the warrior in front of him. He looked like stone, unmoved by the shouts, untouched by the tension. His silence, heavy and strange, made a few aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. They could not understand why he did not show fear. The warrior princess stepped forward, raising her massive blade to the sky. The weapon shimmered with alien energy, its edge glowing like fire. She roared, and the crowd roared back, their voices bouncing from wall to wall. The ground trembled with the stomping of thousands of feet. Dust rose, swirling in the air, making the arena feel like the center of a storm. The announcer's voice carried across the arena, calling out the rules of the challenge. "The duel will end with surrender, death, or mercy given by the victor," he said. "No one may interfere. No one may leave until it is decided." His words made the crowd roar again, their excitement reaching its peak. To them, this was not a fight. It was a show, a chance to laugh at the foolishness of a human who dared stand in the Queen's hall. The human did not bow, did not nod, did not even flinch at the announcement. He simply adjusted his grip on his small weapon, his face calm, as if he was standing in an empty room, not before thousands of enemies. The warrior princess tilted her head, her sharp smile wide. "Still no words, human?" she taunted. "Perhaps you cannot speak because your throat is already tight with fear." She circled him slowly, her boots crunching against the sand, her blade dragging across the ground, leaving deep scars in the stone floor. Sparks flickered each time it scraped against rock. The crowd howled, feeding on her display of power. But the human's silence was like a shield. No insult touched him. No laughter reached his heart. His eyes followed her every move, sharp and calculating, like a predator waiting for the right second to strike. A group of alien elders sitting near the queen leaned toward one another, whispering. Their eyes narrowed as they studied him. One muttered, "Why does he not tremble?" Another hissed, "He must already know death is coming." But even as they spoke, doubt slipped into their voices. The queen leaned forward, her sharp nails gripping the arm of her throne. She enjoyed the mockery, but a small part of her felt something off. The human's posture was too steady. His breathing was too calm. He stood like a soldier who had done this 1,000 times before. The announcer raised his staff high. "Begin!" he shouted, and the sound echoed like a bell. The warrior princess roared and charged, her blade slicing through the air with deadly speed. The crowd screamed in delight, expecting the human to fall within seconds. Dust and sand shot upward as her boots thundered across the ground. Her massive sword came down like a storm, the glow of its energy lighting the whole arena. At the very last second, the human moved. His small weapon lifted, not in panic, but with precise control. The clash shook the ground, metal against metal, sparks flying between them. The sound was sharp, ringing through the silence that followed. The crowd gasped. No one had expected him to block the first strike. The warrior princess snarled, shoving forward with her great strength. The human's feet slid back across the sand, but he did not fall. He bent with the force, adjusted his stance, and pushed back. His tiny weapon held against her massive blade. The crowd erupted in confused shouts. Some still laughed, but others fell silent, their eyes wide. They leaned forward, trying to understand what they had just seen. A human, holding back the strongest warrior of their people? Impossible. The warrior hissed, pulling her sword away and striking again, faster this time. She swung from the side, from above, each blow strong enough to crush stone. The human blocked every strike, his weapon flashing like quicksilver, his arms steady. Sparks lit the arena with each clash, and the sound of steel rang again and again. Whispers began to spread through the seats. He should be dead already. How does he move so fast? That weapon, it should have broken by now. Their laughter began to fade, replaced by unease. The princess grew angrier with every blocked strike. Sweat glistened on her forehead. Her pride burned. This was supposed to be a joke, an easy victory, proof of alien superiority. But this human, this small figure with a tiny weapon, was holding her back in front of her queen, her people, her court. She lunged forward with a shout, driving her blade down with all her strength. The human sidestepped, quick as lightning. Sand sprayed into the air as her weapon slammed into the ground, cutting a deep scar into the stone. She jerked her sword free, turning to face him, but he was already standing still again, his weapon raised, his calm eyes waiting. The crowd erupted into gasps. The elders whispered louder now. The queen's golden eyes narrowed, studying the human more closely. His stillness, his silence, his patience. It was not weakness. It was something else, something dangerous. The warrior princess breathed hard, her chest rising and falling, but the human had not even broken a sweat. His calmness was a weapon in itself, cutting deeper than any blade. The duel had only just begun, but already the crowd felt the shift. The laughter was gone. In its place grew a sharp tension, a heavy suspense that hung in the air like smoke. The queen leaned back slowly in her throne, her lips no longer smiling. Interesting, she whispered to herself. She had wanted a show, an easy humiliation. But what stood before her now was not comedy. It was a warning. The human was not playing the role they had written for him. He was writing his own. The warrior princess adjusted her stance, her eyes burning with anger. She had expected the human to fall with the first blow, yet he stood firm, blocking her strikes as though he had done it all his life. The crowd, who once laughed at his small weapon, now sat divided. Some still shouted insults, but many had gone silent, their eyes locked on the duel. The tension grew heavier with every second. The princess raised her massive blade again, its red glow flashing across the arena. With a cry, she brought it down in a furious arc aimed at the human's head. Dust flew as the ground split, but once again his tiny weapon blocked the strike. The clash shook the air like thunder. Sparks danced across their faces, lighting the human's calm expression and her furious snarl. She stepped back, breathing hard. Her pride stung like fire in her chest. This was not supposed to happen. She swung again from the side, quick and powerful, but the human tilted his body just enough to avoid it. The blade scraped against the ground, cutting deep lines into the stone floor. Before she could pull it back, he moved. One step forward, his weapon snapping up with precise speed, tapping her wrist just enough to throw her off balance. The crowd gasped. She stumbled back, shocked. No alien warrior had ever been touched so easily. Her pride roared louder than her voice, and she bared her teeth, lunging again. This time, her swings grew wild, each blow filled with fury. She wanted to crush him, humiliate him, end this before the whispers in the crowd grew louder. But every strike met the same calm defense. The human bent, blocked, or shifted away, his body moving with perfect timing. The crowd began to murmur among themselves. How is he still standing? That weapon, too small, too weak. How does it hold? He moves like water, not stone. Their laughter was gone now. In its place was unease. The warrior princess's chest heaved as she pulled back for a moment. Her golden eyes narrowed on him, searching for weakness. You hide behind tricks, she spat. You cannot last forever. She lunged forward once more, aiming for his chest with a brutal thrust. The human slid aside, and her sword cut empty air. Before she could turn, his small weapon tapped the edge of her blade, sending a sharp vibration up her arm. She hissed, realizing too late that her arm felt heavier. He had not tried to hurt her yet, only to unbalance her, to test her. That realization made her anger boil hotter. She roared and swung high, her blade screaming as it cut down through the air. The human lifted his weapon in a smooth motion, meeting her strike with another clash that rang across the arena. For the first time, the princess felt the weight of his strength. Though his weapon looked small, his grip was steady, his stance unshakable. The clash sent a tremor through her muscles, forcing her to step back. She blinked, confused, then angry again. This was not the weakness she had promised her queen. This was something else entirely. The human did not speak. His silence was heavier than her words, sharper than her insults. He stood like a shadow, calm and waiting, letting her burn her strength while he saved his. His eyes followed her every move, cold and focused, hot, as if he already knew where her blade would land before she swung it. The crowd's voices grew louder with uncertainty. Some shouted for her to finish it. Others began to whisper that perhaps this duel was not so simple. The queen leaned forward in her throne, her golden eyes narrowing with interest. The corners of her mouth tightened as she watched. The human was proving something dangerous, and she could not ignore it. The warrior princess screamed with rage, charging forward once more. Her sword cut through the air again and again, each strike powerful enough to break stone pillars. Sparks flew, dust rose, the arena shook with every hit. But the human kept moving, blocking, dodging, never once stumbling, never once letting go of his weapon. He was steady, patient, like a hunter watching his prey exhaust itself. Finally, she swung with all her strength, her sword crashing down with a blow meant to end him. The human lifted his weapon, meeting it in a perfect block. The force cracked the ground beneath his feet, but he did not fall. He pushed back, his small weapon glowing faintly now under the energy of her blade. The clash sent a burst of sparks into the air, a shower of light that lit their faces. The crowd gasped again. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The warrior princess's arms shook with the effort, while the humans remained steady. The whispers turned to shock. "He's holding her back." "Impossible!" "No human can do this." The princess gritted her teeth, forcing more strength into her arms. But the human only tilted his head slightly, his calm eyes meeting hers. She felt something stir in her chest, a strange, unwelcome chill. For the first time in her life, she realized she might not win. She pulled back, her breathing ragged. The human lowered his weapon slightly, but his eyes never left her. He was waiting, ready. The crowd grew restless, their cheers turning into uneasy murmurs. The duel no longer looked one-sided. The laughter had vanished from the air, replaced by suspense so thick it seemed to choke the arena. The queen gripped the arm of her throne tighter, her golden eyes fixed on the human. She whispered to herself, too softly for others to hear, "What are you hiding, human?" The warrior princess raised her sword again, but her confidence was cracking. Her pride told her she was still the strongest, but her instincts whispered otherwise. She had mocked him for his small weapon, had promised her people an easy victory. But now the truth began to show. His silence, his patience, his strange calm, it was not weakness. It was the warning of something greater, something dangerous, waiting beneath the surface. The crowd held their breath as the duel dragged on, their laughter forgotten, their cheers quieting into silence. Every eye watched the human now, not with mockery, but with something far heavier, fear of the unknown. The warrior princess lifted her sword again, her chest burning with anger and shame. She had struck him with all her strength, yet the human still stood, his tiny weapon steady in his hand. Sweat rolled down her face, but his skin was dry, his breathing calm. The crowd, once loud with laughter, now sat on the edge of silence. They had come to mock a human, but what they saw now unsettled them deeply. The queen leaned forward on her throne, her golden eyes narrowed. She had expected this duel to end quickly, yet the human resisted every strike. Her fingers tapped against the stone armrest, the only sound breaking the thick silence around her. Her mind whispered that something was wrong. This was not the weakness she had promised her people. This was not the humiliation she had expected. The princess gritted her teeth and roared, swinging her glowing sword in a wide arc. The human blocked once more, but this time he slid back several steps, his boots digging into the sand. The impact cracked the floor beneath him. Dust shot upward, covering his figure. The crowd cheered, believing he had finally been shaken. The princess smirked, lifting her blade high. She wanted to end it in one final blow, crush him completely in front of everyone. But as the dust cleared, the human was still standing. His body was steady, his eyes sharper than before. And then, for the first time, he moved not just to defend, but to act. Slowly, he crouched down, pressing one knee into the sand. His free hand reached toward his side, sliding beneath a small section of his armor near his waist. The crowd tilted forward in confusion. The princess froze, her instincts screaming that something dangerous was about to happen. The sound of metal scraping against stone echoed through the arena as he pulled something free. At first, it was hidden by the dust and shadows. Then the light caught it, and the crowd gasped. It was not the small weapon they had laughed at before. It was something bigger, longer, heavier, and older. Its surface glowed faintly with blue veins of energy, like fire locked inside steel. Every alien eye widened as the human raised it fully into view. It was a plasma rifle, ancient and forbidden, the kind of weapon the aliens themselves had once feared during the old wars. No one had seen one in generations. Their people had outlawed it, destroyed it wherever it was found, claiming humans were too fragile to ever master such power again. Yet here it was, resting calmly in the human's hands, humming with energy like a sleeping beast about to wake. The crowd erupted into chaos. Shouts filled the air, voices of fear and disbelief. Some screamed that it was impossible, others cried out warnings, but all felt the same chilling truth. The human had not come unprepared. He had brought with him a weapon their laws had tried to erase from history. The warrior princess staggered back a step, her confidence cracking completely. Her sword, once a symbol of pride, suddenly felt heavy in her grip. The glow of her blade seemed weak compared to the deep, pulsing light of the rifle. She tried to laugh, to mock him again, but no words left her throat. Her pride drowned under the weight of fear. The human stood slowly, raising the rifle until it aimed at the arena wall. His face remained calm, his silence heavier than ever. He pulled the trigger once, and the world seemed to explode. A beam of blue plasma burst forth, slamming into the stone barrier. The wall shattered in an instant, melting into ash and molten rock. The explosion shook the entire arena, throwing dust and fire into the air. Screams rose from the crowd as they saw the destruction, and silence followed as they realized that one shot could do the same to any of them. The princess's eyes widened in horror. She had mocked his tiny weapon, laughed at his weakness, but she now understood the truth. That small weapon had been nothing but a distraction, a toy to keep their attention while he carried the real one hidden below. He had been waiting, patient, biding his time until they revealed their arrogance fully. The queen stood from her throne, her golden eyes blazing, but even she did not speak. Her lips pressed tightly together as she stared at the hole in her arena wall. The smoke still curled upward, the edges of the stone glowing red from heat. She knew at once that if the human had aimed at her throne instead, she would not be standing now. The human lowered the rifle slowly, his movements calm, controlled. He did not gloat. He did not shout. He did not even look at the crowd. His eyes remained locked on the warrior princess, who now held her sword weakly, her pride shattered. Her hands shook as she realized she had been beaten not by strength, but by patience and cunning. The crowd whispered wildly, fear spreading like fire. A forbidden weapon. He should not have it. How did he hide it? He will destroy us. Their voices were full of panic now, nothing like the laughter they had carried before. The warrior princess took a step back, her boots sliding in the sand. She tried to raise her sword again, but her arms felt heavy. Her pride had been broken in front of her people. The human had revealed his secret, and with one shot, he had changed everything. He aimed the plasma rifle at her, its glow reflecting in her wide eyes. For a long moment, silence gripped the arena again. The only sound was the low hum of the weapon, vibrating like a living thing in his hands. The crowd held their breath. No one moved. No one spoke. All they could feel was fear. The warrior princess swallowed hard, her throat dry. She had mocked him, laughed at him, sworn that he would die with his tiny weapon. Now, standing before the glow of the rifle, she knew that one more pull of the trigger would end her life in less than a second. Her pride could not protect her. Her strength could not protect her. And worst of all, her queen could not protect her. The human silence said more than words ever could. He had revealed the truth they had all tried to deny. Humans were not weak. Humans were not toys. They were dangerous, clever, and patient. And when the time came, they knew how to strike. The glow of the plasma rifle still hummed in the human's hands, blue light washing over the arena walls. Smoke curled upward from the hole he had blasted into the stone, the air filled with the sharp smell of burning rock. Every alien in the stand sat frozen, their laughter long dead, replaced by heavy silence. Fear spread across their faces, and the queen's golden eyes narrowed, burning with anger, but also with caution. She had never expected a human to hold such power, and now she realized her warrior's mockery had cost them their pride. The warrior princess stood across from him, her sword still raised but trembling in her grip. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her breath ragged. A moment ago, she had been certain of victory, mocking the human's tiny weapon, laughing at his weakness. Now she faced the glowing rifle aimed steadily in her direction, and she felt her strength slipping away. The crowd that had once cheered her name now watched with fear, waiting to see if she would be destroyed in the next second. The human took one slow step forward, the plasma rifle steady, his face calm as always. He did not shout, did not boast, did not even move with urgency. His silence made him more terrifying than any roar of anger could. Every eye followed him, and every alien felt the same cold truth. The battle had shifted. The human no longer defended himself. He was in control. The princess snarled, trying to recover her pride. She swung her sword through the air, sending sparks across the ground as it cut through the sand and struck the stone floor. "Do you think your glowing stick can frighten me?" she shouted, her voice loud but uneven. "I am a warrior of the queen. No human can ever defeat me." Her words echoed, but they sounded weaker than she intended. The crowd did not cheer this time. They only stared, silent and tense, their faith in her broken. The human raised the plasma rifle higher, pointing it directly at her chest. The weapon hummed louder, its blue veins glowing brighter. For a heartbeat, the whole arena seemed to stop breathing. The princess froze where she stood, her golden eyes wide, her chest thudding with fear. For the first time in her life, she realized that her strength and her pride were useless against him. If he chose to pull the trigger, she would vanish in fire and smoke, just as the wall had. But he did not fire. Instead, he shifted slightly, aiming past her, and pulled the trigger again. A bright beam of plasma burst from the rifle, slamming into the far wall. The explosion lit the arena in a flash of blue light, sending fire and dust into the air. The stone cracked and crumbled, part of the wall collapsing into rubble. Gasps rose from the crowd, some voices screaming in fear, others falling completely silent. The human lowered the weapon slowly, its glow fading just enough to show that it was not spent, but still alive, ready for more. The princess staggered back a step, her sword lowering without her realizing it. Her heart pounded in her chest. He had aimed away from her, even when he could have ended her. He had spared her, but the mercy stung worse than defeat. She felt small before him, smaller than she had ever felt in her life. The crowd whispered louder now, voices of disbelief filling the air. He is sparing her? Why doesn't he kill her? What kind of human fights like this? The queen rose from her throne, her golden staff striking the stone once more. "Enough," she commanded, her voice echoing like thunder. The arena fell silent instantly. She glared down at the human, her face pale but her eyes sharp. She saw the fear in her people's faces, the broken pride in her daughter's eyes, and she understood what this moment meant. A human had not only stood against their strongest warrior, but had spared her life, proving not only power but control. That was something even her warriors could not claim. The princess lowered her sword fully now, her shoulders heavy, her pride shattered. She had promised to crush the human in seconds, but instead, she stood disarmed by fear, alive only because he allowed it. She looked at him, her jaw trembling, and whispered under her breath, "Why did you not kill me?" Her voice was too soft for the crowd to hear, but the human heard it. He did not answer. His silence was answer enough. The aliens in the stands whispered in fear and confusion. Many looked at the human, not with mockery, but with respect. Others still trembled, realizing how close they had been to death if he had chosen differently. The hum of the plasma rifle was like the sound of fate, a reminder that their laws, their arrogance, their pride could not erase the danger of humanity. The queen's jaw tightened as she spoke again, her words carrying across the arena. "By law, the victor holds claim over the defeated," she declared. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her unease. And this duel is over. The human has shown his strength. The warrior stands defeated. The crowd gasped, shocked by the queen's announcement. Some cried out in anger, others in disbelief, but none could deny the truth. The duel had ended, and the human was the victor. The warrior princess fell to one knee, her sword slipping from her hand and clattering onto the sand. She lowered her head, unable to look at him, unable to face the shame. She had mocked him, called him weak, laughed at his small weapon, but in the end, it was her pride that had been broken. The human had revealed the truth hidden below, and now she was his by the laws of her own people. The crowd sat stunned, their eyes darting between the queen, the princess, and the human holding the glowing rifle. The silence that followed was not laughter, not cheer, but the kind of silence that came when the world itself realized it had changed. The human lowered his weapon at last, its glow dimming slightly, but his calm expression never shifted. He had not come to prove himself with words. He had come to show the truth, and with one hidden weapon, he had turned their entire world upside down. The arena floor was covered in dust and broken stone, smoke still rising from the walls where the plasma rifle had struck. The smell of heat and ash filled the air, and silence pressed down on the crowd like a heavy blanket. The human stood in the middle, his weapon lowered but glowing faintly, the hum of its energy still sharp in everyone's ears. Every alien eye was on him, waiting, watching, unable to believe that their strongest warrior had been brought to her knees. The warrior princess stayed on the ground, her head bowed, her sword fallen in the sand beside her. Her pride, which once shone brighter than her blade, had been shattered. She could still feel the vibration of his weapon in her chest, the memory of its destructive power. One thought echoed in her mind again and again. He could have killed her. He should have killed her. But he did not. That mercy was worse than defeat because it left her alive with her shame exposed before her people. The crowd's whispers grew louder, spreading like fire. The human won. She is beaten. He spared her life. Some spoke with fear, others with awe. Even the elders, who had lived through many battles, leaned forward with wide eyes. They had seen strength before, but never this. Never the calm control of a human who carried death in his hands and chose not to use it fully. The queen's golden eyes burned as she rose again from her throne. Her hand gripped her staff tightly, her knuckles pale. She could feel the shift in the air, the weight of her people's fear, and she hated it. Yet even she could not deny what the law demanded. By their ancient traditions, the victor had the right to claim the defeated. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. The duel is over. The human stands as victor. The warrior is his. A roar of shock spread across the stands. Some shouted in anger, refusing to accept the result. Others cried out in disbelief, their voices breaking. But none dared deny the queen's word, for the truth was written in the arena itself, the broken stone, the melted walls, the warrior kneeling in shame, and the calm figure of the human who had turned their laughter into silence. The princess lifted her head slowly, her golden eyes meeting his. She wanted to hate him, to spit curses at him, to rise and strike again. But her body would not move. Her pride was broken, her strength useless. Instead, what she saw in his steady gaze froze her heart even more. It was not arrogance, not mockery, but something deeper, calm judgment, as if he had already known this moment would come. She lowered her head again, her throat tight. The human stepped closer, the sand crunching softly under his boots. The plasma rifle still glowed in his hands, its light painting the air between them. When he stood only a step away, he pointed the weapon down toward her throat. The crowd gasped, believing he would end her life now. But he did not fire. He simply held it there, steady, showing her and everyone else that he could end it at any second. The silence was so deep that even the hum of the rifle felt like thunder. The princess closed her eyes, waiting. But the shot never came. Instead, the human lowered the weapon, pulling it back to his side. His choice cut deeper than any blade. He had spared her twice now, not because she deserved it, but because he decided so. The power of her life and death rested in his hands, and that truth crushed her spirit more than defeat ever could. The queen's jaw tightened. She saw her daughter kneeling, saw the human's weapon glowing, and felt the sting of humiliation sharper than ever. But she could not break the law, not here, not in front of all her people. Her voice shook the air once more. By law of conquest, the warrior belongs to the victor. From this day, she is bound to him. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some shouted in rage, some in sorrow, and some sat frozen in shock. Never before had their laws been used against them in this way. Never before had a human stood above their warriors, forcing them to bow. The warrior princess's heart hammered in her chest. She felt chains around her, not of iron, but of shame and law. She belonged to him now. The thought made her burn inside, yet she could not deny it. Slowly, painfully, she lifted her hands and pressed them into the sand, bowing fully before him. Her forehead touched the ground at his feet, the greatest humiliation of her life. The human looked down at her, his expression unchanged. He did not gloat, did not smile, did not even move with triumph. He simply stood, silent and calm, his weapon glowing at his side. His silence was a storm heavier than any shout. To the crowd, it was unbearable. To the queen, it was unforgivable. To the warrior princess, it was undeniable. The whispers turned into fear. Some aliens began to say what none had dared before. Humans are not weak. Humans cannot be mocked. If one man can do this, what will happen when more come? The fear spread across the arena like smoke, wrapping around every throat. The queen raised her staff high, silencing the noise once more. Her golden eyes locked on the human, her voice cold as stone. "You have won this duel," she said. "But know this, victory brings chains as well as glory. You may hold my warrior by law, but you will find that power is a curse heavier than you think." Her words carried warning and venom, but the human only stared back, silent as ever, his calm more dangerous than her threat. The princess trembled as she remained bowed. She had been humiliated before her queen, her people, her court. And yet, in the quiet of her heart, another feeling stirred. The human had spared her not once, but twice. He had shown her a strength that did not come from cruelty, but from control. Against her will, respect began to grow, a bitter seed planted in the soil of her defeat. The arena remained hushed, the smoke still hanging heavy in the air. The duel was over, but the echoes of it would last far longer. The human had not just defeated a warrior, he had defeated their pride, their certainty, their belief in superiority. With one hidden weapon and his unshakable silence, he had turned their world upside down. The arena was heavy with silence, as if the air itself had frozen. Dust still floated in the shafts of sunlight, glowing faintly above the broken walls. The human stood calm, the plasma rifle resting at his side, its faint hum echoing like the heartbeat of the entire place. Across from him, the warrior princess knelt low, her sword lying forgotten in the sand. She did not raise her eyes, for she could not. Her pride had been shattered, her body weakened, her spirit broken. She had mocked him before everyone, but now her silence was her only shield. The queen remained standing on her throne, her golden staff glowing faintly as her eyes burned with fire. Rage filled her, but she could not deny the law that bound them all. Her voice cut the silence. "By conquest," she declared, her tone sharp and hard, "the human has claimed victory. By ancient law, the defeated warrior belongs to the victor. From this day forward, she is his." The crowd gasped as if one breath left thousands of throats at once. Some shouted in disbelief, others cried out in anger, but none could break what had been spoken. The law was older than the throne, and even the queen herself could not change it. Her words had sealed the fate of her daughter, and of the human who now stood as more than just a challenger. He stood as master of their strongest warrior. The warrior princess felt her blood boil, her hands clenching in the sand. Humiliation burned hotter than fire in her chest. She wanted to scream, to fight, to deny it. But her body betrayed her, heavy with defeat. Slowly, she forced herself to rise, her head bowed low. Step by step, she crossed the sand until she stood before the human. The crowd held its breath, waiting, and then, in a voice rough with shame, she whispered, "I am yours? By law." Gasps spread like ripples across the arena. No one had ever heard her speak with such weakness. The same warrior who once stood proud, mocking and laughing, now lowered her head before a human. The human looked down at her, his eyes calm, unreadable. He gave no sign of joy, no smile of victory, no boast of power. He simply stood, silent as stone, his rifle glowing faintly in his hand. That silence was worse than any words. The queen's fury twisted inside her, but she kept her face composed. Her people were watching, and she could not reveal weakness. Yet her mind raced with fear. This was not just a duel. It was a story that would spread across the empire, a story that would weaken her rule. The day would be remembered as the moment when laughter turned to silence, when pride turned to shame, and when one human made them all tremble. The crowd began to chant, not with joy, but with confusion and fear. Some voices whispered, "The human owns her now." Others muttered, "What if more humans come? What if they all carry such weapons?" The fear spread quickly, infecting even those who tried to hold on to their pride. For the first time, they saw their own laws turned against them, and they could not escape. The warrior princess lifted her head slightly, her golden eyes meeting his. There was fire still inside her, but it was no longer only anger. Mixed within it was something new, something she had never felt toward any being before. Respect. She had mocked him, called him weak, called his weapons small. Yet he had stood against her, revealed his strength only when it mattered, and spared her life when he could have ended it. That mercy confused her more than his power. She wanted to hate him, but her heart betrayed her. The human finally moved. He lowered his plasma rifle completely, the blue glow dimming as he slid it back into the hidden slot beneath his armor. The crowd flinched as if expecting another explosion, but he gave them none. His calmness spoke louder than destruction. He had already proven what he needed to prove. He looked at the princess for a long moment, then turned his gaze to the queen, his silence cutting sharper than any blade. The queen gripped her staff tighter, her voice colder than ice. "You have your victory, human. Take it and leave my sight. But know this, our people do not forget. This law may bind you now, but it will not protect you forever." Her threat echoed through the arena, but even she knew the weight of her words was hollow. She had seen the rifle, seen what one shot had done, and deep in her heart she knew she was not the one in control anymore. The princess stepped beside him, her head bowed low. The sight of her standing there, defeated and bound to him, shook the entire arena. The crowd murmured with unease, some turning away in shame, others staring in disbelief. The silence of the human made it worse, for he carried himself not as a victor, but as someone who had already decided their world was beneath him. Together, they walked toward the gates of the arena, the sand crunching beneath their boots. The crowd parted in fear, no one daring to stop them. The human did not look back, but the princess glanced once over her shoulder at her people. Their eyes were wide, their pride broken. She knew they would never see her the same again. As they left, whispers filled the air. "The human has taken her. He has broken our laws with our own law. What will this mean for the empire?" The fear was alive now, spreading like a shadow across the hearts of every alien who had witnessed the duel. The queen sat back down on her throne, her hand trembling slightly against the staff. She clenched her teeth, hiding her weakness from her people, but her mind screamed with one truth. Humanity was not to be mocked again. This single duel had changed everything. Outside the arena, the air was cooler, quieter. The human finally stopped walking. The warrior princess stood beside him, her heart pounding. She could not bring herself to meet his eyes. At last, she whispered, her voice unsteady. "Why? Why did you spare me?" But he gave her no answer. His silence was all she received, and it shook her more than any words could. For the first time in her life, she understood that her defeat was not just her own, it was the defeat of her entire people. And the man beside her, calm and silent, had become more than her conqueror. He had become the shadow they all feared, the warning they would never forget.